is a voice. It has no name yet, no stage, no tuned instrument, just a throat open against the midday heat, in the middle of a field with no end, doing something that is not exactly singing and not exactly speaking. It is something else. It is the sound that comes out when words alone are not enough to carry what weighs on you, when the body has worked past its limits and the mind is still holding what the body can no longer bear. That voice is not looking for an audience. It is not looking for recognition. It is looking, in some way, to turn what it feels into something that can be released into the air without destroying everything from the inside. That happened for generations before anyone put a name to what they were hearing. The blues was not invented in a studio or designed to fill a market. It was discovered slowly in the cotton fields of the American South, in the churches of black communities, on dirt roads that led from one dead end to another. It was discovered because it was necessary, because there was a collective experience so intense, so loaded with loss, injustice, and forced labor that it needed a way to be organized into something outside the body. And that way was sound. The African American experience that gave rise to the blues cannot be separated from the world those communities lived in during the 18th and 19th centuries. Slavery did not only take freedom and land, it took language, names, family, cultural memory. What remained was something very deep and very resilient. The capacity to create, to communicate through what could not be entirely suppressed. African musical traditions travelled inside the bodies of those who had been torn from their continent, not as sheet music or theory, but as a way of shaping the voice, of using repetition as force, of establishing a conversation between the one who sings and everything around them. That conversation has a name in musical history: call and response. It is one of the oldest foundations of African music and one of the pillars on which the blues was built. The idea is simple but profound. Someone says something and something answers. In African traditions, that exchange happened between a soloist and a chorus, between the voice and the drums, between the song and the rhythm of collective work. In the blues, that logic moved inside the song itself. The voice launches a phrase and the guitar responds. Or the voice repeats itself, as if it needs to confirm what it just said, as if the only way something can be real is to name it more than once. That repetition is not laziness or limitation. It is one of the most powerful decisions popular music has ever made, even though it was never a conscious decision at all, but a natural way of processing. When someone repeats a line in the blues, they are not filling space. They are insisting. They are saying that this truth does not fit inside a single utterance. Repetition turns a phrase into something that can no longer be ignored, into something that settles in. And that changes the way it is heard because it stops being received as information and becomes presence. The structure that came to define classic blues is known as the 12-bar form. You do not need to read music to understand what it does. It establishes a harmonic framework that repeats, that builds expectation, that creates tension and then resolves it. Inside that framework, the voice can move with enormous freedom. It can delay a phrase, stretch a vowel, break in the middle of a note, and put itself back together. That tension between a fixed structure and free expression is what makes the blues sound alive, even when it sounds simple. It is not simple because it lacks depth. It is simple because all of its depth is concentrated in emotion, not in technical complexity. The notes that give the blues its particular color also have a history. They are known as blue notes, and they are certain inflections placed slightly outside the conventional major scale. They do not land completely on one note or completely on another. They live in the space between, in that zone where sound bends, curves, and slides. That quality did not come from European music theory. It came from an African way of treating the voice and instruments, where exact pitch was not the goal, but exact feeling was. What mattered was not hitting the right note, but delivering the right emotion. And that philosophy changed forever the relationship between Western music and feeling. The guitar gradually took on that role over time. In the earliest years of the blues, the voice was the central and almost only instrument. But when the guitar became prominent in Southern communities, its ability to bend strings and make notes, speak in ways that resembled the human voice, made it the perfect companion. A blues guitar does not accompany, it converses. It does exactly what the chorus did in African traditions, what the congregation did in the spirituals sung in black churches. It responds, sustains, contradicts, amplifies. Inside those same black churches in the American South, another fundamental element was taking shape. Spirituals were religious songs that combined faith with resistance, that used lyrics as code and music as shelter. That use of the song as a double language, as a way of saying one thing and meaning another, passed directly into the blues. The blues talks about lost love, roads that lead nowhere, nights that do not end, but it also carries everything that could not be named directly. That ability to hold multiple meanings inside an apparently simple structure gave it an emotional density that very few genres have reached since. In the early 20th century, the blues began to move. African American communities that migrated to cities in the north brought that sound with them. And in cities like Chicago, Memphis, and Detroit, the blues found electricity, literally. The electric guitar amplified not just the volume, but the intensity, the ability to sustain notes, to make them vibrate in ways the acoustic guitar could not. The urban blues that emerged in the 40s and 50s was more powerful, more aggressive, more self-aware. But it was still the same language, the same way of organizing pain, the same call and response logic, the same tension between structure and freedom. What happened next is present in almost all popular music of the last century. The young musicians who heard the blues in the mid-20th century did not copy it, they absorbed it. The foundations of rock and roll are directly drawn from the blues. The prominent electric guitar, the driving drum beat, the 12-bar harmonic structure, the voice that does not announce but feels. Chuck Berry took that energy and pushed it towards something faster and more danceable. The earliest Elvis Presley recordings have blues running beneath them like an underground current. And when British musicians in the 60s discovered the great guitarists of the Delta blues, something in them ignited in a way that no European conservatory had ever managed. Jazz grew alongside the blues and took from it the principle of improvisation as an aesthetic value, the idea that music does not have to be fully written in advance, because the emotion of the moment is also part of the composition. Soul carried that emotional power toward the collective, toward the political, toward the voice of communities demanding to be heard. Funk took the rhythm, dismantled it, and rebuilt it from the body outward. Rock took the electricity and pushed it to its physical limits. And along each of those paths, the blues left something that did not disappear, even as the genre itself transformed. Today, the classic blues does not top the most played charts, but every time a guitar bends a string in a way that sounds almost human, every time a voice chooses the crack over perfection, every time a song repeats a phrase because once was not enough, the blues is there. Not as a distant influence, but as DNA. As a way of understanding that music does not have to resolve pain in order to be powerful. It can simply name it with precision, hold it long enough for whoever is listening to recognize something of their own, and in that recognition find something that feels a great deal like not being alone. That is what makes the blues one of the most important forces music has ever produced. Not its age, not its technical influence, not its place in history books. But the fact that it was born from a real experience, from real people who found in sound a way to keep existing with dignity when the world around them was doing everything possible to deny it. And that root, That honesty of origin is what keeps pulsing inside music, even when few people can name it. The blues taught the world that a single voice, with very little, can say something that lasts for generations. That emotion organized into sound does not expire, that there are ways of resisting that need neither weapons nor manifestos. Sometimes all it takes is opening your throat and letting out what weighs on you, with the hope that someone, somewhere, will recognize it as their own.